All right. So today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast, my guest is Kristy Sumner. Kristy is the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal. Soul Sisters Paranormal is a group of sisters and friends who travel to some of the most reportedly haunted locations across the U.S. to investigate claims of paranormal activity. Kristy is here to share the story of being the first and so far only team of paranormal investigators to investigate the Ma Barker House in Florida. Welcome to the broadcast, Kristy.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you having me today.
All right, I'm so excited to learn about this. Let's start with how did you get started in paranormal investigations?
Okay, so our very first story on the paranormal investigations is that my sisters and we live in different parts of the country, and we really like to get together for girls' trips and girls' weekends just to kind of meet up. And our mother is from Moundsville, West Virginia originally. So we actually had a friend of the family who sits on the board of the West Virginia State Penitentiary, and he said, why don't y'all come up, spend the weekend, and do a paranormal investigation at the Moundsville prison, the West Virginia State Penitentiary there. And so we jumped at that opportunity. So we flew to West Virginia, and we actually stayed the night in the prison, got locked in, and it was just a very rudimentary investigation. We had a couple voice recorders, a couple digital cameras, but we left with that experience with such what we felt was compelling paranormal evidence that we decided that we wanted to formalize a team and really go to historic locations around the country and explore, not so much for the history, but also for the paranormal reports of those locations.
Okay, that is far from being a typical girls' trip, so that is awesome. But how did you not freak each other out? Like, I know a lot of people would not want to do this because, I mean, you're dealing with the paranormal and it can be a little scary, and there are stories of bringing it home with you and all that stuff. So,
Mhm.
how did you guys, gals,
Gals, yes. We're an all-female team. Yes, so gals.
yes, go through the process of, okay, we're not scared. This is what we want to do, and find actual enjoyment and pleasure in it.
Well, we grew up watching obviously paranormal shows like Taps or Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures and stuff, and we would find ourselves saying, "Why didn't they ask this question here? Why didn't they spend more time here?" So we told ourselves if we ever had the opportunity to do a paranormal investigation, we'd jump on it. And all of us on the team, there's 5 of us. We're all very strong women. We all have advanced degrees. So I have a PhD. My sister has a PhD, a couple JDs, and a master's. And so we've all have that spirit, if you will, of research and exploration. So when we went to Moundsville for the first time, there were moments that we were startled and kind of like, okay, what are we doing? But when you really delve into it and you get into why are these things happening, and can we advance the research base of the paranormal community, then that's really what we wanted to do. And then also, our primary goal was also to highlight the history of these locations. So before we go and do an investigation, we absolutely extensively research the location. We put together a dossier of everything that we know about the location, any individuals that were there, and that really guides our investigation as well. So for us, it's not so much scary, but exciting because we're in these historic locations. Not many people can say that they've been to the St. Augustine Lighthouse and stayed the night there, or the Lizzie Borden house, or the Villisca Axe murder house, but we can say that we've done that. And to be able to do that with my sisters is to me just an amazing experience.
Oh man, yeah, I can only imagine. And yeah, so absolutely coming at it from the research mindset. So you guys are not there to freak each other out. You're there to do the research. And now, for my own curiosity, you said initially you guys had very basic equipment, but as you grew, like, what kind of equipment do you bring with you on the location?
Well, the very first piece of equipment that we never leave home without on an investigation are our voice recorders. And for me, the reason we have the voice recorders is it's the truest sense of what I feel is compelling paranormal evidence. When you're in a location and you capture a male voice on a voice recorder and there's no males on the property, or you capture a child's voice and there's no child on the property, that to me is extremely compelling, and it's hard to debunk, if you will, because like I said, you've got this male voice talking on the voice recorder and there is no male present. So we always have voice recorders. We have night vision video cameras that we set up. We each wear body cameras, so we all have a timestamp of where we're at in the location. And then we have electronic equipment that's used and designed to gauge what we feel is paranormal activity. So for example, we have what's called K2 meters, and they're actually used by electricians to find electric energy in a location, or electricity in a location. So when we take these meters into a building or a house or an abandoned asylum or something that has no electricity, and they start to activate, that is extremely compelling, because theoretically they should not alarm, they should not activate. So we have what we call K2 meters. We have what we call a REM pod, which again measures electromagnetic energy. We have what's called a spirit box, which is essentially an AM/FM radio that's been designed to very quickly sweep through frequencies such as AM and FM. And so when you're listening to it and you just turn it on, you just hear the of it sweeping very quickly through all these AM/FM channels. And so the idea is that the spirits use that to speak through the white noise. And we've had several compelling pieces of evidence come from that spirit box. And then what we also like to do is put out what we call trigger items. So if we go to somewhere like a prison, we'll take cigarettes or water or some type of item that's very germane to the situation that we can leave and try to get a response from that item, from any of the spirits that are in the location.
Oh, wow. That's very in depth and so fascinating. So when you get to a location, you set up your equipment, you establish all this, and pretty much you stay up all night observing what's happening. Is that how it kind of unfolds?
Pretty much, yes, ma'am. We actually, the first thing that we really do is we go in and we take a day tour. And the reason we do that is because we want to establish any environmental factors that we can see during the day that could affect our investigation during the night. So we'll go in and we'll look for things like street lights, windows, are there dogs in the neighborhood, car activity, airplane traffic overhead, anything that could account for noise that if we hear it during the night, we can say, okay, that's a plane. It's not anything paranormal. It's something else. It's in the environment, and that's not going to be paranormal. And so then we'll set up all of the night of the investigation. We'll go in and we'll set up what we call stationary equipment. So we have 12 night vision video cameras. So we'll set them up in various locations around the building. We have voice recorders, as I said. We'll leave those in various places, different trigger items, as I said. And then we just spend the rest of the night going around and conducting what we call EVP sessions. So we'll sit in a room, we'll ask questions, try to get responses from our handheld equipment. If we hear any noises or bangs or voices or footsteps or something like that, obviously that is something compelling that we can't explain. A lot of the times it's really us sitting in a room, either talking to ourselves or talking to each other, because we do split up during the night as well. And then some of us will go off individually or we'll go in groups of two. So it's sort of like fishing in a way, because you're anticipating something to happen, but 9 times out of 10 you're just sitting in the dark, just talking to yourself. It's really when we go back and listen to the audio and video footage that we captured on our stationary equipment, that's where we get the majority of our compelling evidence.
Oh man, so that's a lot. A lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of being patient, long nights staying up, and then going back and reviewing all the content to hopefully catch something. And I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
assume all that research is what you use when you're sitting in the room and you're asking the question and you know who's been there, what has happened to them, so you can engage and see if you get something from them. All right,
Absolutely.
well, so I'm sure we're going to get more into that with the Barker house. So let's get into that specific investigation.
Sure.
How did you come across this project and what made you want to go there? And what is the request process to get access to a location?
Well, in our historical background, the house is located in Ocklawaha, Florida, which is it truly is a one stoplight town. It just has one stoplight. It has a little road going through it. But my grandparents lived about 5 miles from the location where the house was. So when we would go over and visit Nana and Granddaddy, and we'd go through Ocklawaha, they'd always point out, there's the Ma Barker house. That's where that shootout happened, in 1935. So we had a general idea of what happened in the house. And so I always told myself, just in the back of my mind, if I ever get the chance to go in there, I would just love to see the house itself, just for the historical significance, as well as look at any paranormal claims. Because after the shootout, neighbors were reporting noises and footsteps and stuff inside the house. So I always told myself, if we could get in there and investigate, I would absolutely love it. So the shootout happened in 1935, and I'll go into some historical research in a minute. But it happened in 1935, and the owners that had the house in 1935, that family maintained it up until 2016. Then they decided that they wanted to sell the property. The new owners decided that they didn't want the house. They wanted the property, but not the house. So they were going to demolish it.
Mm.
Well, Marion County, Florida said, we will take the house, and they paid $250,000 to put it on a barge and float it across Lake Weir. So it went on a barge for 2.5 miles, and it's now sitting in a new location in the Carney Island Recreation area there in Marion County. So after they moved it, and I knew Marion County had control of it, I actually went to Marion County, to the Park and Recs department, and I told them who I was and what I did, and showed them my portfolio of how we do an investigation. And they were very gracious and allowed us to go in and do that. And for me, it really was a dream come true, if you will, just to get inside there and really see the house and what it looked like during the shootout. Because the owners, the family, they maintain, after 1935, they maintained the house as it was during the day of the shootout. So there's still bullet holes on the wall. There's chairs that have bullet holes in the back that you can line up to the bullet holes in the wall. The furniture, most of it is still all original. The doors, the floor, all of it is still original. So when you walk back into the house, you really get this feeling of being enveloped by 1935, if that makes sense. So for me, it was a great experience, and to be the first to investigate in the location was, to me, just a tremendous honor.
All right. So that is awesome. So then can you tell us the story? What is the Ma Barker story?
Okay. So the house itself was built in 1930, and it was built by a gentleman by the name of Carson Bradford. And he made a lot of money in the entertainment industry. So he had amusement parks and such. And he had a family down in Miami, and that's where he made his fortune. But he wanted a house in Central Florida, a lake house that he could have as a retreat, a vacation retreat. So he built this house on the side of Lake Weir in 1930. And basically, he would just come up some weekends and during the summer to vacation with his family. So you've got the house itself. Now, during the 1920s and the 1930s, you've got a lot of sociological and political things that are going on. So you've got the Great Depression and you've got Prohibition that are going on. And so you've got these gangs of essentially bank robbers that are sprouting up, as well as organized criminals. So the organized criminals, such as Al Capone and his ilk, they were creating these partnerships with law enforcement. Essentially, if you turn a blind eye to what we're doing, we won't do any damage in your city. And so that was the arrangement that was made. Well, the bank robbers, they took advantage of that situation as well. So they were able to rob banks and stuff and cross jurisdictional lines without any state law enforcement coming after them. So in the middle of all this, you've got a woman by the name of Kate Barker, and she has 4 sons, Herman, Lloyd, Doc, who is also named Arthur, he went by Doc, and Freddie. So you've got the 4 boys, and they decided to form a gang of bank robbers. And so Ma was essentially the figurehead. They called her Ma, and she became the figurehead of this gang. And then another guy by the name of Alvin Karpis decided he wanted to join the gang, and they became the Barker Karpis gang. So they crisscrossed the country, robbing banks and just creating mayhem wherever they went. And so they were getting money here and there, but small packs of money, $2,000, $3,000, not really netting a whole bunch. But they were also committing murders when they were doing this. So if somebody got in their way, they would shoot to kill. So Also during this time, you've got J. Edgar Hoover, who is coming to prominence in the Bureau of Investigation, which will become the FBI. So what he does is he comes in and he's standardizing federal law enforcement training standards. So now he becomes the figurehead of a national criminal justice organization, which again becomes the FBI. So the Barker Karpis gang, they decided that they wanted to graduate from bank robbery into kidnapping. So in 1934, they kidnapped a gentleman by the name of William Ham, who was a brewer, and they wanted $100,000 in ransom money for him. They received the ransom money, they released Brewer, and so then they started crisscrossing the country, dividing up this money between the gang. Again, so you got J. Edgar Hoover over here, who now the kidnapping is bringing them into the national spotlight. So in 1934, they decided to try another kidnapping, and this one was a guy by the name of Edward Bremer, and his father was great friends with President Roosevelt. So they wanted $200,000 ransom for Bremer, and they ended up getting it. They released Bremer, and now Roosevelt told J. Edgar Hoover, go get these guys. I don't care what it takes, just go after them. So the gang decided to split up, and you've got one of the sons, Doc, he went to Chicago, and Ma and Fred came down to Central Florida. And so they were looking for a house to rent that was a hideaway, essentially. So they came across this house on Lake Weir, and they approached Carson Bradford and said, we want to rent your house. They gave the alias of TC Blackburn and said, can we rent your house? And he said, no, it's not a rental house. It's my family's house. So they said, well, we'll give you $100 a month to rent this house, which was extravagant because the other rentals in the area were going for $7 to $10 a month. So they offered him $100 a month, and he said, fine. So this was in November of 1934. So again, the FBI is chasing them, but they can't find Ma and Fred. So come around to January of 1935, they tracked Doc Barker to Chicago. And when the FBI raided his apartment, they started going through all of his files and everything. And they found a letter that was written by Ma while she was in Central Florida. And it referenced a lake and an alligator named Big Joe. And the letter said, your brother's having a great time here in Florida trying to kill this alligator named Big Joe. So the FBI took that and they came down to Florida and they talked to alligator trappers and said, we're looking for a lake where there's an alligator known as Big Joe. And that led them to Lake Weir. And so through subsequent investigations, they were able to track Ma and Fred to the house that they rented, the Carson Bradford house. So on the morning of January 16th, 1935, a dozen FBI agents surrounded the house and they yelled for Ma and Fred to come out. And the response was gunfire. So the gun battle ensued. It lasted about 4.5 hours. Over 2,000 rounds were fired between the two. And it still maintains the designation of one of the longest shootouts in FBI history, the culmination of which led to the death of Ma and Fred inside the house. So none of the FBI agents were harmed, but Ma and Fred were killed, and they actually laid in state in the morgue here in Ocala for about 8 months before the bodies were claimed. So that was what happened inside the house. And again, after the shootout and all the FBI agents leaving and all of that, Carson Bradford and his family maintained the house as it was during that day.
Just out of curiosity. Okay, first off, very thorough, awesome story.
Well, thank you.
You get this down pat. That's excellent. But out of curiosity, did they catch the other brothers?
A great question. Okay, so just again to round out the story, so the Herman, the oldest of the Barker boys, before this shootout, he was actually cornered in a bank robbery, and he ended up killing himself rather than be taken by the law. Doc Barker, after they captured him in Chicago, he went to Alcatraz, and he was sentenced to life in prison in Alcatraz, and he tried to escape, and he was shot and killed by the prison guard as he made his way down to the water from Alcatraz. And then Lloyd Barker, he was the one guy that really tried to turn his life around. He got out of the life of crime and he moved to Westminster, Colorado. And he was working as a dishwasher in a bar. And he came home one day and his wife just decided to pick up the shotgun and kill him. So he was killed by his wife. And then Alvin Karpis, who was the other figurehead of the Barker Karpis gang, he became, after the shootout with Ma and Fred, Alvin Karpis became public enemy number one. And he was the only public enemy number one taken alive. All of the others, such as John Dillinger and such, were killed before they were taken. So they captured Alvin Karpis at the end of 1934 in St. Louis. and he was sentenced to life in Alcatraz. After 27 years, he was paroled. He was the longest serving prisoner of Alcatraz for 27 years. He was paroled, and he actually moved to Spain, where he died a free man in 1979.
Fascinating. It's fascinating stuff.
It really
Okay.
is.
It really is. Okay. So now let's talk about your experience, your
Mhm.
night there, and did you capture anything?
Okay, so our experience into the paranormal with the Ma Barker house. So again, they have moved the house at this point. It's sitting on about 40 acres, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere. So there's no light pollution. There's no road to it yet. They are building one, but you need a 4x4 vehicle to get down there because of the Central Florida sand. Again, there's no noise, there's no light. So what we also wanted to do is we wanted to do an investigation on the anniversary of the shootout. So this was in 2019. So we actually we went in for the first night, and we set up that stationary equipment that I talked about. We set it up at around 5:30 on January 15th, and we left it to run overnight by itself in the house, and we left. So we had night vision video cameras, we had voice recorders, and my hope was that we were going to capture something what we call residual, which is essentially just a blip in time, that on certain days, like an anniversary or a birthday or something, you'll get some type of response, and it will always happen during that time. So again, we set up these night vision video cameras and our voice recorders, and we left, and we came back and we picked them up at around 11 a.m. that next day, which would have been the actual day of the anniversary of the shootout. And when we went back and we did the review of all of that footage, that audio and video footage, we captured what I feel is very compelling evidence. We captured what I think is a chair being moved across the floor. You can hear it scrape across the hardwood. There's a male voice saying, "Get out." That was captured on 2 different pieces of equipment. There were door knocks and slams and bangs during the night, footsteps during the night. And then the most compelling piece was the video camera that we had set up in what I call the kill room, which is the room where Ma and Fred's body were found. At around the time the shootout would have started 84 years prior, there's an EVP, or an electronic voice phenomena. A voice comes through, and it said, there's 2 voices actually. The first one says, "Freddie." The next one says, "Yeah, Ma." And the first one says, "Get ready," which I think, again, is something that is going to be residual. I think that actually happened. Those were voices, those were phrases that were said the day of the shootout. So again, I call that residual. So to me, that was extremely compelling, and something that I really wasn't expecting. I knew that the house had a background of being haunted. Like I said, neighbors, when it was in the prior location, neighbors would say, "We hear something, we see something." But what we captured that night was far exceeded my expectations. So then after that, we went back the next week, and my sister Jenny and I, it was just the 2 of us in the house. We went back and did an extensive investigation where we stayed in the house for the night. And we were capturing things, again, on our voice recorders. We captured voices. We captured a light anomaly that I cannot explain on one of our cameras that we had set up. And then that spirit box that I spoke about, the AM FM radio that it sweeps through frequencies, we had that set up in the room where Ma and Fred were killed. And I asked certain questions that would be very germane to the situation. So I said, "What happened in this room?" And through the spirit box, you get the phrase, "They murdered us. We're the ones dead." And so again, when you're talking about what the spirit box does, you shouldn't get full phrases, because it's sweeping so fast through frequencies. And so the fact that we got that full phrase was extremely compelling to me. And then I asked, if you're here, can you say the name Blackburn, which is the alias that they rented the house under? And through the spirit box came the word Blackburn. Again, very compelling. I can't explain that. There's no reason why, if it was picking up radio frequencies, why any radio station would say the word Blackburn as I'm asking the spirit box to say the word Blackburn. And then another piece of evidence was, I said, "Alvin, are you here?" Being Alvin Karpis, I said, "Alvin, are you here?" And through the spirit box came the phrase Alvin Karpis. I never said the last name Karpis. I just said Alvin. So again, those are very compelling pieces of evidence. And when you stack up what we found, for me, it's things that I cannot explain. And I have multiple pieces of equipment giving me these unexplainable events. So when I walk away from that, like I said, it's very compelling to me.
Man, I got the chills as you're explaining all of this.
It's interesting for sure.
So super fascinating. So now that you know that a location has paranormal activities, like, is there a next step for you? Like, do you want to know more of why they're still there, or what it's all about?
Well, for me personally, two things to answer that question. After we did that investigation, I became so fascinated with the house that I actually have volunteered with Marion County. So I am a Park and Recs volunteer, and I give tours through the house. Before COVID, I was doing 2 or 3 a week. So I'm in the house quite frequently. I always take a voice recorder with me when we go, and I've been able to capture some different things that I can't explain. Uh, Obviously, when you have 10 to 12 people going through it, there's a more noise pollution than just sitting there by yourself. But just walking into the house, or being in the house, you just get this feeling of, like I said, stepping back into 1935. And it's the paranormal, but it's also the historical aspect of it that is so fascinating to me. So for me, I'm very connected to the house still.
Is there a negative, evil sense to it?
Not to that house, no, ma'am. We've been to locations where we have felt something like that. But for me, if you watch any of our videos or you follow what we do, one of the driving factors behind what we do is we're legitimately trying to tell a story. And we'll go into these investigations, and the phrase we commonly use through every investigation is, will you allow us to tell your story? Can you tell us what happened here? What is your story on this situation? And I feel that Ma and Fred wanted their story told, because the obviously the real story is the FBI killed this gang, this very evil gang members in that house that day. To them, they were murdered, and I think I picked that up on that spirit box. Because it came through, they murdered us, we're the ones dead. So in their minds, they were murdered, and that's their story. So for me, that was my goal, that was my job. And so when I walk into it, I don't feel negative. I don't feel any type of dark energy in there. I just think they're happy where they're at. I get a lot of people asking me, why didn't they stay with the land? Why did they come with the house? And my response to that is, they were nomadic in life. They had no home base. And so the house, the last hideout that they had where they were killed, is the last house that they knew. So in my mind, they had no connection to the land, but they did have a connection to the house. So if I'm that spirit, I'm going to move with that house to the place that I feel comfortable in the house. And so for me, it when I walk into it, I just get the sense of, there's this grumpy old woman and her son and maybe a couple other gang members that are just fine hanging out there. It was their hideout, and they're comfortable there. So for me, the Ma Barker house itself, that I've never felt any negative or dark entity in that house at all.
Interesting. So to you, they're continuing their stories. They're continuing on their lives.
Essentially, yes. Kind of how they live their life is what's going on in the house. And prior to our investigation, we read different news reports and stuff, because every now and then, like during the anniversary and stuff, newspapers would come in and they would interview the Bradford family, and is it haunted and all of that, especially during October. And there are some newspaper reports of the family saying, yeah, we've heard footsteps, we hear glasses clinking, we hear chairs being moved, but it's just, to us, they've never hurt us or harmed us. We're just going to live in harmony with them. And so that was one of the driving factors in my mind that led me to believe, yeah, there could be something paranormal happening here, which is why I wanted to investigate. And like I said, for me, it's just they're kind of living out their gangster days, reliving them inside the house.
Hmm. And the other fascinating part is that other members have joined them there, even though they didn't end their lives there. Obviously, there's family bond.
Mhm.
And have you identified who you think is there with them?
I do think Alvin Karpis, just because the spirit box said Alvin Karpis, I do think that he comes and visits. And my reason for saying that is that he and Ma were extremely close. And so the fact that she died there, it is very, it would not surprise me if his spirit came back to visit that. Every now and then we'll have somebody in a tour group who claims to be a medium or something like that, and they'll say they sense Al Capone, and I'm not going to question that. If they
Yeah.
do, that's fine. To me, I don't think Al Capone is there. He has no reason to be there. He had no connection to the gang. But apparently Al Capone's spirit is all over the world. Everybody has an Al Capone story, but for this house, I don't think he's there. But I do think that they had the ability to kind of interact, if you will. And I do think that Alvin Karpis may come on occasion and visit Ma and Fred there.
Fascinating, fascinating. Now, how long have you been doing this kind of work, and how has it like impacted and changed your life and your outlook on life?
We started in 2014. That our first investigation was at the end of 2013. So we really started in 2014. We formalized the group. Because for us, we really wanted a professional look and feel to what we do, because we're already fighting a mainstream notion that the paranormal community is a subculture, and basically it's filled with kooks and crazies and stuff like that. So we really wanted to kind of see if we could step above that. And so you'll notice that we have a brand, we have a trademark, we have a logo, we have a theme song or a theme music. And we really wanted to kind of, like I said, put together that professional look and feel of what we do, because I think that adds to the legitimacy of what we do. And so like I said, we really got into it for that spirit of exploration, and also the driving factor of going to these historical locations and putting forth some information that maybe our viewers didn't know before, or facts that they didn't know before, enough to say that is a very interesting place, I want to go, and hopefully preserve those locations. Because to us, if we can help preserve any of these locations, that is our driving force here.
Mm.
And then if we capture any paranormal activity, obviously we'll put that in and relay it to the history. So for us, it really has been getting into this sense of exploration because we want to preserve the history of it. And then we've just been extremely fortunate in the way we do our investigations and the way we conduct our investigations and the research behind it. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to capture some very compelling things that we can't explain.
So how has all of that though impacted you, like over the years that you have been doing this?
To me, it's actually brought me peace, if you will, because everybody has an innate fear of death. I'm one of them. I'm sure most of your listeners and viewers are as well. They have that fear of death. But for me, the more we delve into this, the more I know that there's something after this. And I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm not trying to convince anybody that my views are right. I'm not trying to convince anybody that any of the locations that we've gone to is haunted. I don't feel that's my job. What I'm doing is trying to build a case for some very compelling evidence that I can't explain. But for me personally, delving into this, it's brought me this sense of peace. I'm obviously not looking forward to death, but it's not something that is scary or frightening, as it may have been in the past. All the experiences to me just say that there is something else after this. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, so we have to go somewhere. And to me, that just it's a little bit of a comfort, if you will. So I think that's been the biggest impact. That and just getting to go to these places that we otherwise might not have gone to.
That's awesome. I mean,
well, thank you.
And again, it is your life. It is what you're living and you're observing and you're experiencing. So it's very rooted into everything that again is in your environment and what is your life. Now, and one of the things throughout this interview, because one of the words you don't use is the word haunted. It's paranormal activity, and I can see. I appreciate, again, it's something that I knew nothing about. And when you know nothing about something, I think you have even more opinions because you don't know anything about it. So you're like, so it's been very educational listening to you and opening up, my mindset. And I hope the others who are listening, the same thing to, this isn't about ghost stories or being haunted, but it's about the stories that have taken place and the continuation or the, not the validation, because obviously it's written in history, but the fact that it's still, reminiscence of that happening still exists today.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to say that. And again, and I'm happy that that's what is coming across, because that is what I want to portray. So thank you for noticing that.
Oh, well, absolutely. Okay, so before we go play the first time lightning round, because I think some people might have this question because it is popping in my head. Do you do private homes or is it just historical sites?
No, ma'am. We do private investigations as well, not residences and businesses. So what generally happens is somebody will contact us on our website or, hit us up on Facebook and say, hey, I'm experiencing this. Do you think this? So we get a lot of questions about residential and business hauntings, but we do get called in. Can you come and investigate this location? Can you come and investigate my house? And we approach that a little bit differently than we do what I would call the commercial locations. Because we do want to get some history on the house. We do want to get some history on the family and just really figure out what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So we will go in and do an investigation there and try to ascertain what they're feeling and what they're seeing. And we also conduct the same environmental research that we do in our commercial locations, our commercial investigations, and really put that into practice as well. And so after that investigation, those residential investigations, if we find anything that we feel that we can explain that is compelling enough to be called paranormal, we'll ask them what they want to do with that information. Do you want the spirits removed, or do you want to live with them, or do you just want answers? And that answer really determines what the next move is, because nobody on my team is a demonologist. We're not ordained ministers. We don't conduct cleansings. We don't conduct removals, anything like that. We're in it specifically for the scientific research and trying to find those unexplained answers. If somebody wants something removed, then we have people that we call that can assist a family with that.
What's the norm? the average norm or whatever, are people relief when you can give them, like, we have found something that we can't explain? Like, do they have a sense of relief? Okay, well, we're not crazy. We knew something was going on.
And usually that sense of relief comes immediately when we start listening to them, because most of the time, if they're talking to a colleague or a friend or another family member and they say, I think my house is haunted, they get looked at like, you're nuts. But when we actually say, okay, yeah, I totally believe you, something is going on, whether it's environmental or paranormal, we'll get to the bottom of it. So the first thing that I will do, so example for the last one that just happened, I'll give them a couple voice recorders and I'll just say, take these voice recorders, set them up in your house, just go about your day, and let's see if we can find anything paranormal there. And so then once we really go back and listen to that, there is that sense of relief. In most of the cases that we've experienced, there's not been any harm to the family. There's not been anything, demonic or that is frightening enough for them to move out. It's just little things like noises, bumps, pictures being moved, something being knocked down. And when we really delve into, who could it be or what could it be, that does bring them a sense of comfort that, one, somebody is listening, and two, we're trying to get to some answers here. So, we've had instances where I'll say, it could be grandma that just died, and she's just trying to let you know that she's here and that she's okay. And then once you acknowledge those spirits and say, hey, I acknowledge that you're here. I acknowledge that, you have a story. What is that story? Do you want to tell it? But also to set boundaries. You cannot hurt me. You cannot physically harm me in any way. And then if you want them out, basically just ask them to leave. And most of the time we've found that those boundaries are respected.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if someone after listening to this is like, I need Kristy in my life, like she needs to come to our house, how do they get in touch with you?
The best way is to visit our website at www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And we have all of our contact information there. So you can absolutely just shoot us an email. We're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal. So you can just shoot us a message there. And we're usually quick to respond.
All right. You heard it. If you need Kristy, reach out to her. We're going to switch over and we're going to play the first time lightning round. So okay. The way it works is I'm going to give Kristy 10 different first time options. And similar to if she was on the app, if it's something she's done before, she'll say up, done it before, I swipe up. Something she's never done, not interested, we go left. And if something that she's never done, would like to do and add to her list, we go right. Okay. All righty then. First one. Make a prank phone call.
I have done, yes.
Okay. Tell us about your first prank phone call.
Oh, this was back in high school. Basically, it was when you have girls that spend the night together, and the shenanigans that we get up to. So it was basically prank calling teachers. So my mom, because she was active in the PTA and all that, she had the list of all the teachers' phone numbers. So we would call teachers and, and prank call them. So we've done that.
So was it just calling and hanging up, or would you ask for somebody that didn't live
Sometimes,
there?
or we just do the classic, refrigerator running and all of that stuff. Just silly stuff.
That's awesome. Okay, next one, volunteer at a library.
I have done that. Yes, I volunteered at a library, both here here in Ocala, and both in Orlando and Ocala. So volunteered there, and I love libraries. I mean, seriously, now it's kind of it's not something on the forefront of people's minds to go to, but I love going through books. When we had card catalogs, going through the card catalogs. Obviously Google has made it a little bit easier, but yes, libraries are awesome. I love them.
Yeah, library is still excellent resources, and they provide a lot of programs, and they still do so much in the community. Definitely support your libraries.
Exactly. I've actually done several presentations at libraries, and I've got a couple lined up this year, I think. So
Oh, excellent.
mhm.
Next one, travel to Asia.
I have not, but would like to.
Would
So
like to
that's
do. That's a
to the
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ride on a jet ski.
I have, yes. My
Oh,
brother has jet skis, so riding on a jet ski. I've never skied. I'm very proficient at snow skiing, not water skiing, but jet skiing, absolutely.
okay. Play tennis.
Oh, yes, I have done that. Not very
Uh-oh.
well. I'm more of a team sport type of person, so I actually had a college scholarship for softball, so I played that. But tennis, I took lessons for about a year, but I just didn't like the solitary aspect of it. It's kind of like golf. I'm more of a team sport type of person.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
I was the opposite. I ended up playing just solo sport, tennis being one of them for some reason. Okay, next one. Attend a wedding.
Yes, I've attended a wedding. My family actually has a wedding venue. So pretty much every Saturday I'm at a wedding. And then my sister and I are twins. So when we were growing up, everybody wanted twin flower girls. It seemed to be the thing. So I've actually been in, I think, 6 or 7 weddings as
Oh,
a
wow.
flower girl, as a twin flower girl. So yes, up.
Do you remember the first one, the first wedding? Is it
Yes. Yeah. I think we were around 6. And we were real cute. I mean, we had these little dresses on, and they put these the little daisies, they had a ring of daisies around our hair, in our hair. And, yeah, we just walked down, and it was for my, uncle.
Oh, yeah. I was a flower girl to the first wedding I went to, and I felt so special. I felt so included.
Aw,
And
yeah.
yeah, same thing. Like, I love being all dressed up. And when I still see those pictures, like, oh, in my case, I'm like, that's the only time I'll ever wear a white dress and walk down the aisle. But it's kind of
Oh,
neat. Yeah.
aw, yeah, it was very cute. We were very cute flower girls. That's why everybody wanted us.
Oh, okay. Next one, fly a kite.
Yes. Yes, I'm from Central Florida, and I'm a farm girl. So I mean, we were flying kites all the time. It was actually something that we would get every birthday.
Hmm.
So we had some trick kites and stuff like that we would fly. So yep, fly a kite, done that.
What are trick kites?
They're the kind that actually, like, they have two instead of one,
Oh,
string.
you
They'll
can
have
do.
two, and you can maneuver them, and make them dip and roll and up and down and all of that. So
Oh, so you're next level kite, fly kite
well, I wouldn't go
flyer.
that far. I'm not like an expert, but I can get one up. I'm really proficient at crashing them, but I can keep one up there pretty good.
Oh, okay. Next one, make beer. So make beer at home.
No, I've never made beer, but I would be interested. So to the right.
To the right.
Mhm.
Next one, play the slot machine.
Oh yeah, in Las Vegas, absolutely. Played it, lost a lot of money. My game is more craps and roulette, but yes, play the slot machines in Vegas every time we go.
All right. Well, next time you're in town, you're going to have to let me know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. Last and final one, shop at a farmer's market.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. My younger sister lives in Virginia, so when I go and visit her on Saturdays, before all of this happened, on Saturdays we would go to farmers markets. She also lived in Aspen for a while, so we would go to some of the farmers
Um,
markets there. So yeah,
yeah, both places have very nice farmers
it's a
market.
lot of fun, especially in the fall when you can get apples and pumpkins and squash and all of that. Love farmers markets.
Ah, yeah, such a nice experience, and hopefully we'll return to having those nice experiences.
Yes, and soon.
Yes. Final question is, how have you been making the best out of the current situation with the pandemic?
For me personally, it's been a lot of this. You're actually the third podcast that I've done today, and I've got two
Oh,
more
wow.
lined up for today. So I've been doing a lot of interviews, trying to really promote Soul Sisters, and just doing some evidence review. We've got 3 investigations that we did. We did 2 in March, and then 1 in February. So I'm just trying to get the evidence review or the footage review done for those. We just released the Lizzie Borden video. I was able to get that completed. So really just working on the Soul Sister stuff. And then, because we do have professional jobs. We're all professionals in our other worlds. So working on all of that as well. So for me, it's the internet and Zoom and Facebook and all of that has really allowed us to stay connected. And so my life hasn't been impacted very much other than the fact of, wearing the mask and all of that. But um, we've been coping really well, actually.
All right, awesome. Yeah, going through all that footage it must be a mixture of interesting, exhausting, boring, and many other things, I'm gonna guess.
It is, a lot of the locations, we spend at least 8 hours at a location. Sometimes that rolls into 10, 12, 24 hours. So it does take a lot of time to go through everything. But for me, it's worth it. When you're listening to audio and you're just laying there listening to audio or sitting there doing something, and 99% of the time you've just got static. But when you have that one instance where you have a voice come through or something that you can't explain, it's an adrenaline rush for sure.
Ah, yeah, that's true. Have you ever, as you're talking, have you ever fallen asleep listen like you're while you're listening to?
I have done that on occasion. I'm pretty disciplined about it. Like I won't lay down. I'll sit up at a desk or something like that. Every now and then I will, but I always mark where I stop. So that means I just have to rewind back to my
Yeah.
last stop point and start again. Yeah, every now and then, but it's not something that's routine for sure.
I'm assuming because you can't be distracted because it's not like it's got loud voices that come in. Because from what I have seen, it's soft or far away or tough to make out. So you really have to truly pay attention.
Exactly. You definitely have to pay attention, especially with the audio. I mean, you can't go out and mow the lawn while you're listening to this. So you do have to be in a quiet situation. The audio does allow me to do other things like on the computer and listen and zone in that way. It's actually the video footage and watching that takes the majority of time, just because you do have to sit and watch. And like I said, you're watching the same screen for 24 hours, and it gets tedious. But like I said, when you see that shadow figure walk across, or you see that laser grid being broken by something unseen, that's when you're sitting up and saying, okay, it's worth it. For me, it's worth it.
So I just could keep asking you questions.
Well, you got me till 5, so
Oh, I think too, you have other interviews. So thank you so much for your time. This was educational, fascinating, interesting. You're so well spoken and you laid everything out just beautifully. I really, truly appreciate you coming on and sharing the stories that you shared.
well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you having me on and taking the time to interview me and just really supporting us. So thank you so much for that.